Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today, like most of you, I am looking at all the scrap pieces of wood that I have kicking around from various projects. And the one on screen in front of you there is a beautiful piece of black walnut from another project. It's actually just a cutoff, so if I zoom out here, you can see it's not that big. It's just a touch under 12 inches long, 7 inches across, and I believe an inch and 3/8 in thickness. Right beside it there to the right of your screen is a piece of sapilli that's another cutoff from a set of shelves that I made they went into a hair salon and turned out beautiful, but yeah, that's another story. This particular piece of sapilli I really like, but it's an odd piece that's left. So I'm going to probably cut that down and make that into the bottom. Okay, so I cut down my original piece. This is the longer piece. It's actually got a bad crack in the end here, facing away from the camera. So I cut it down to 30 inches because we have a crack. I'm just going to run it over the jointer here quick. It's pretty flat already because, like I said, I've already worked on this piece, but I'm just going to take just a shaving off it to make sure, because the next thing I'm going to do after that is run it through the table saw, cut it into size, and then I'll start breaking it down into smaller pieces. And while we're doing that, the soon-to-be top is not yet planed or jointed, so I'm going to do that as well. We'll shoot the whole thing here in one shot, and we'll go from there. As you can see, we've set the table saw up to start ripping these pieces into 3/4, so they're 1 3/8 heavy. And what we're going to do is run this through the table saw. I've got my featherboard set up. This is the Featherboard Pro, and there's actually 2 of them stacked on top of one another, so it's applying pressure against the fence. I don't really think you need them with this thick of a piece of wood, but just for my added peace of mind, so to speak, I like having the pressure on there. There's very little pressure holding that in against there. I'm going to use one of these guys to just continue pressure through, so I'm going to rip this, then I'm going to take it out once it's through, rotate it over top of itself so that my jointed face is against my fence again, run that through. Then I'm going to raise the blade and go through this again, do the same thing. I'm not going to be able to cut all the way through. This is, I believe it's 6 1/4, 6 1/2. So I'm not going to be able to cut the whole thing through on the table saw. Safety-wise, it's not a bad thing. I generally leave a little bit of holding wood in the middle so that you don't have the edges popping over. So I'm going to cut this through, finish that, and then I will reset and do the sides on. That went well. as you can see in the image here, so I got a little bit more holding wood left on the top, and I cut it down to where I was comfortable. So this one I'm going to finish off. I've got a Japanese ryobi saw. I'll cut that through. Obviously, if you had a bandsaw that could take the width of this job would be so much easier. I don't. I have a small bandsaw. It only has a 5-inch throat on it, so this stuff won't fit through it. And it's pretty hard on the little saw to cut that big of a piece, so I use my table saw. Again, if you have a bandsaw, that would be a better way to do it. Anyway, we'll move this over to my bench, and we'll start cutting this through with the ryobi. Okay, as you can see, we're over at the bench. I've got it in my vise and tightened down. If you aren't familiar with these saws, this is a ryobi. It's a Japanese pull saw. This is one of the ones that you just go in and get the blades replaced. There's an attachment on there and this whole thing pops out. There's two edges to it. There's the ripping edge, whereas you can see the teeth are a lot larger, and then there's like a very fine edge. So what I do to start my cut is I use the fine edge to start, because these teeth are fairly hard to start in a cut. Once the cut's started, then I switch over to the ripping edge and I slide that in there. And as you can see, it does not take very long. So this is almost cut through. It's actually trying to close up on my saw. So I need a little wedge, which I have. One of my cutoffs. You know, so I've got a piece of, I think this was from a table leg that I'm using. So this is just going to sit in there, like so, until it falls on the floor. I will finish this cut off. So like I said, I generally start with the finer teeth. Especially since I'm cutting into a knot. And there's our piece. A fair amount of work for a little lid, but the grain I think is worth it. So now I got the other piece. I'm going to do the same thing. I might just be able to rock it over and break it. Then we'll check to see if this thing is warped. It doesn't look like it has, and we'll go from there. So the boards that I've got are 19.7 and 19.2 in thickness. That's the millimeters, obviously. The jointer planer has both millimeters and inch on it. I prefer metric most of the times when I'm using it. I just find it a little bit easier mentally to deal with that math. So what I'm going to do next here is run our boards through. These are my sides. That's my top. And I actually was able to maybe get a usable piece out of the opposite side. So I'm going to run that through towards the end there. That actually might turn out to be the bottom of my case. Yeah, we'll see. I'll give it a test. It's a different thickness. It is 12.8, so 12.9. It's in the 1/2 inch range. So yeah, once I plane this down to a little bit, we'll go from there. Once again, I'm going to turn off the sound. Okay, grooves are cut in with the dado blade. So this is the test panel I did. Here's my 1/4" groove, snug. That's what we want. And there's almost no gap in there. So that's what we're looking for. Nice, snug, tight fit. Sits in that panel, sits in there pretty nice. So now we can do the scary part, which is going to be running that figured wood through the router and seeing if that tears everything apart. Little concerned that that's what's going to happen, but we'll give it a try and we'll go for it. Like I mentioned at the start of the video that I was doing here, this is the sapilli, so this is going to be the bottom. So I'm going to run this through first, see how that fares, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, I'm going to run this piece through first, and then I'm going to do this very pretty top, and hopefully it doesn't tear apart. That worked really well. I'm really happy with how it turned out. The panels turned out really nice. No tear out that I can see right now. They both look pretty good. No burning. There's a little chip there. A little bit of a chip there, but I'll be able to hide that in the groove. It looks really good. Both of those turned out really nice. No major concerns. So now I think what I'm going to do is look at cutting out the miter folds there. I got to mark that out, and then we'll cut that out and get all this rolled into a box and start the glue up. Blue tape is on. My panels are ready to go. Everything's protected. I'm going to use, this is Tight Bond 2. And it's the brown formula just because the wood's made for darker wood. So I thought, might as well use it for this. Just have to scrape off the rest of the thing. All right, tape's on, glue's ready to go. I did a dry fit earlier. Everything looks pretty good. Normally with this, I would just use blue tape all the way around and fold it up. But with these two panels in there, they're pretty snug, so it's creating a little bit of pressure, forcing me to kind of twist it a little bit. So I'm gonna actually got some band clamps that I'm gonna use. But now, let's start getting some glue on. And for the end pieces, that glue is really watery. For the end pieces, I'm going to put a little bit of glue in there. And only glue the end panels in, so I'm only going to glue these edges, not these edges. And that should hold the panel in place and stop it from rattling, but any seasonal changes with moisture, humidity shouldn't cause any problems. I've made a few of these, and I've yet to have anyone come back and say, hey, your jewelry box blew apart, because the panels aren't very big. Okay, glue is dry. So out with the handy dandy saw. And let's try. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Anyway, you get the point. I'm going to keep doing this a whole bunch more times, and then we'll come back, sand it off, and cut the lid off. All right, so this is still attached, but not by much. So let's see what's inside this Easter egg. Still a little bit of holding wood. All right. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit of cleanup, but other than that, I'm fairly happy. Okay, hinges are installed. I always struggle with butt hinges, I'm not gonna lie. This time though, installing them with them recessed inside of the frame to give the lid a bit of support when you open it up so it doesn't flop all the way over. Because this lid is so heavy and the box is relatively small in comparison, if I let the lid flop all the way over, that puts a lot of stress on the hinges and the little screws in there. So I wanted to prevent that. So this way, I don't have to install any additional hardware in the box, like a stop chain or something like that, which I don't really like. I did struggle with the hinges, I'm not gonna lie. Butt hinges are always a challenge for me in this kind of install because it's so precise. However, this worked really well. I'm pretty happy with it. Overall, everything looks pretty good. No major flaws. My mortises inside aren't super tight. I've got about a millimeter of spacing around them in a couple of spots because I had to fine tune the adjustment. But everything else works pretty well. I quite like this. I like the idea of it opening and pausing like that. You probably already noticed, but I'll point it out anyway. So you can see that I've got a gap here, right? This is where the hinges are. That's the disadvantage of this style of install. But what I'm going to do, and this was I was going to do this anyway, is I'm going to install little silicone inserts on there anyway. I also have some brass ones I'm going to look at to see if that'll work. And that will give this nice kind of shadow line aspect there. As you can see in front of you, the jewelry box, treasure chest, keepsake box is both finished and complete. I applied the finish last night, which is Odie's oil. Just one coat so far. I don't think I'll need a second. Just as a note, I sanded the lid to a higher grit. So this is 320. The sides and grain is all 220. The reason for that is I wanted a little bit more gloss slash satin on the lid just to highlight the grain on there because it's so pretty. I added a little brass lift knob this morning, epoxied that into place, and there's a little surprise inside. So inside, as I was talking about yesterday, I was going to do a little drop in. I decided to actually use the piece of wood that was left over from the lid. So that is the exact same piece there that we had left over. And yeah, just threw some sides on that, and that just sits in there so nice. It's almost a piston fit. And there's actually enough air pressure there, you have to push it down a little bit. So yeah, really happy with the way it turned out. Super fun project. I do have a lot more footage from doing things like the hinges, some of the miter folding. So if you have any questions or you have any techniques that you want me to go over, leave a comment below. And I likely have footage, or I can make a video that will highlight that one technique. So I could do a short clip just going over any particular thing. So if there's anything that you saw in this video that you would like me to go into more depth on, leave a comment, let me know, and I'll get something out there for you. Once again, thanks for watching. This was super fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. See you soon.